To begin this video, I want to do a little thought experiment with you guys, if you wouldn't mind. Close your eyes for a minute and think about your most favorite video game in the world. Mine is pretty obvious, but your mileage may vary. Do you have it? Good. Now I want you to visualize the game's world and just say or think to yourself what you see. It could be anything. The wide open plains of Hyrule, the blinding lights of Night City, the pristine white walls of Aperture Science, whatever. Okay, now that you got your favorite game's world thought up, I have one final question for you. Would you live there if you could? I'm talking about uprooting your current living situation and starting a brand new life at your thought up location. Would you do it? Me personally, I wouldn't be opposed to living in the world of Fortnite. This might be a weird thing to say about a game where 100 people try to kill each other, but I always found the Fortnite universe to just be so warm and inviting. While a lot of this comes down to the game's art style, there's also the fact that there's just something about the various landmarks and points of interest that just really grab my attention. But now, I hear some of you asking yourself, Max, there's been like 5 main islands in Fortnite history. Which one would you live on? Well, in today's video, I plan to answer that very question. I'm going to be looking at each individual Fortnite island to try and determine which ones would be the best to live on IRL. I'm going to be going through the history of how these islands were formed, their various POIs and other interesting landmarks, as well as going through the pros and cons for each location. To make this easy on myself and so that this video isn't hours long, I'm going to be limiting myself to only the very first appearances of these islands. So like Chapter 1 Season 1, Chapter 2 Season 1, you get the idea. I'll also be removing any potential human conflicts from the equation, so things like the war between the IO and the Seven or the Underground versus the Society won't be a factor. After all, if I'm going to live on these islands, I don't want there to be a war zone outside my house. Finally, at the end of each section, I'll be ranking how likely I'd be to live on these islands. Just as a reminder though, this is all my opinion, so if you disagree with any of my assessments about the islands, feel free to let me know down in the comments. Now that that's all said and done, let's finally get to critiquing some fictional locations. Chapter 1's island, nicknamed Athena, was the first island Fortnite players ever set foot on. While the island's origins are still currently unknown, it's commonly agreed upon that the island was formed at the exact same instant the 0 point sprung into being. As the first of its kind, the island has a relatively simple design, mostly consisting of flat grasslands. That being said, the island is also filled to the brim with all sorts of elevated landscapes, hills and mountains and the like. Athena's POIs are mostly made up of landmarks that you could find in the real world, such as burger joints, strip malls, farms, forests, etc. In terms of Athena's pros, the island has a reliable source of food thanks to the farms located at Anarchy Acres and Fatal Fields. In a similar vein, Loot Lake and the rivers that run through it provide the island goers with a fresh source of water. The existence of Flush Factory implies that there's working plumbing on the island, meaning the toilets in your house would work, which is, a pretty good thing. Speaking of houses, Athena actually features quite a few living options, such as Pleasant Park, Greasy Grove, and Salty Springs. The island also happens to feature a whole host of restaurants, like Uncle Pete's Pizza Pit and Durr Burger, as well as a shopping center at Retail Row. Now, while that's a pretty good list of pros, the Chapter 1 island has just as many cons. The first, and in my opinion, worst part of the island, is the fact that a lot of the terrain is very elevated. As I mentioned at the beginning of this section, Athena is absolutely covered in hills and mountains. Now, in any other instance, I wouldn't have an issue with this, but combine this with the fact that the island's infrastructure leaves a lot to be desired. Sure, there's plenty of roads connecting the various POIs, but they all seem to be one-way roads, which isn't convenient in the slightest. Not that it would really matter, given that none of the cars here actually seem to work. Like, have you ever seen them move? I sure as hell haven't. Anyways, Athena has very limited entertainment options. Other than outdoor activities like hiking and camping, the best it has to offer is the previously mentioned strip mall at Retail Row. And finally, Athena only has one kind of environment, that being the grasslands. There's no desert or snow biomes, for example. That's not really an issue for me personally, but I understand that that can be a problem for some, so I figured I'd mention it. Overall, the Chapter 1 island is a simple location filled with familiar real-world landmarks, a solid agricultural system, and working toilets. If one were to get past the less than ideal infrastructure in place, as well as the lack of biomes and transportation, then this honestly wouldn't be the worst place to live. In terms of ranking this island, I think I'm going to kick things off by putting Athena in C tier. I think putting it right in the middle is pretty appropriate, given it balances its pros and cons pretty well. That being said, let's keep this gravy train rolling with the next island on the list. Chapter 2's island, nicknamed Apollo, was created in the aftermath of the Black Hole event. Serving as a sort of remix of Athena, Apollo comes equipped with some familiar POIs, as well as all new locations like Slurpy Swamp, Sweaty Sands, and Dirty Docks. It does a pretty good job at feeling familiar, yet fresh. In terms of the island's pros, it actually shares a lot of the same ones from Athena. This includes things like good agriculture because of friendly fields, plenty of freshwater sources with newly introduced fishing spots, restaurants and shopping centers, and really good living options. In terms of brand new pros, Apollo has a much better infrastructure in place than Athena, as the roads are actually two-way this time. Speaking of infrastructure, Apollo is confirmed to have a reliable source of power thanks to the factories located at Steamy Stacks. The island also benefits from having a bunch of different environments, like the snow-covered mountains south of Retail Row, the lush Weeping Woods, and the muggy Slurpy Swamp. Speaking of Slurpy Swamp though, that's another huge positive of this island. Slurp seemingly has the ability to heal damn near all injuries, so having a factory that mass produces it is unbelievably life-changing. Finally, Apollo features the Sweaty Sands POI, and as someone who absolutely loves the beach, this is a huge plus for me. In terms of Apollo's cons, I genuinely struggled to find any. Most of the complaints I had for the Chapter 1 island were remedied with this new one, such as the terrain being more traversable due to the improved road systems, and the variety in environments and entertainment options. I guess, if nothing else, the island has a lot of unused space. Like, there's so many empty areas on the map that don't have anything going on, like the north of Pleasant Park and west of Lazy Lake. Yeah, that's honestly all I got. While Athena and Apollo may be pretty comparable, Apollo simply wins out by having more traversable terrain, more bountiful food and water sources, a great power economy, as well as a near endless supply of magical medical slurp. That's pretty hard to beat, which is exactly why I'm going to be placing Apollo in A tier. The Chapter 2 island has always seemingly been the fan favorite map of the Fortnite community, and it's no wonder given all the information I just dumped on you. Now, with all that being said, I'm going to hand the next section of this video off to my good friend B Meister. Take it away, B.
Welcome to Artemis, the Chapter 3 island. Formed by a massive tectonic flip at the end of Chapter 2, this island forms a unique ecosystem. From frozen forests to scorching deserts to tropical shores, there's more variety of environments on this island, and it could provide a decent balance of temperature. Not too hot, not too cold, but just about right. So why did I pick the Chapter 3 island? First of all, this island has some pretty cool attractions that can make the island worth living on. Arguably the biggest reason I would live on this island is that it has freaking Spider-Man, everyone's favorite superhero. Not only is he a pretty chill dude that would more than likely allow you to take pictures with him, but it also means that this island is completely crime-free, so I don't have to worry about getting by a homeless guy on my way to Durburger. While on the topic of Spider-Man, this island has a near-perfect replica of the Daily Bugle, complete with a New York bookstore and a Meowscles cafe, so if you're looking for a casual experience in your favorite comic book location, you'll definitely hit up this POI. Or you can hit up Spidey's gloves to swing around the island, which I think would be incredibly fun and a great way to traverse the island much faster. Think of how long it could take you to get to the grocery store and back. Vehicles would be obsolete. Other than Spider-Man, there's plenty of activities on this island as well. Perhaps a big attraction I could see being promoted on this island is hiking. With the tents, you can camp out anywhere on the island and explore various ruins, or take in the breathtaking sight of the Colombo in his natural habitat, which will make you feel like that one scene from Jurassic Park. Not into hiking? You can go watch a movie, go for a surf at the sanctuary, check out Chonker Speedway where you can gaze on Harlow's big fat. That being said though, this island has some gnarly flaws that drag it down from the top. First up, weather. If we're applying real-world weather systems to these islands, you might have to steer clear from this. Initially, the island starts out entirely in snow, and when that snow arrives, it can make living in the west, north, south, and central part of the islands a little more difficult. Rough terrain, extreme cold, freak blizzards are among some of the problems you'll face during this time. I mean, just look at Tilted Towers, it's almost non-existent. Living on the Chapter 3 island might be about as fun as a week in Oklahoma or Kansas, as you also have to deal with tornadoes and thunderstorms. All tornadoes on Earth are classified using the Fortilla scale, the weakest sitting at F0 and the strongest at F5. Most tornadoes don't usually last longer than 10 minutes, and according to the Fortnite wiki, the ones on the island usually last around 8 minutes, which is the same length as an F2 and F3 tornado, which have a wind speed from 111 to 157 miles per hour and 165 to 206 miles per hour, respectively. Using the old Fortilla scale and looking at the destruction caused by the tornado in Fortnite, I can determine that they fall under the F3 category, which is strong enough to lift a car and provide severe damage to a house. And the spawning of these tornadoes is completely randomized, so living in rural areas such as Sleepy Sound or basically everywhere on the island could require regular evacuation and reconstruction at least multiple times a year. Unless the 7 or the IO develops something that can make the weather near perfect on this island, then that's a lot of money and property damage. That's not even to mention the thunderstorms. I mean, just look at this. This would be traumatic in real life. Holy hell. Oh yeah, and there's also the wildlife you have to live with. So when hiking, you'll need to watch out for packs of wolves and boars. And one more thing, compared to the last island, there's seemingly a lack of agriculture here, which I can't tell if they either forgot to grow crops or those damn pigs destroyed them all. So overall, I think this island would be a bit of a mixed bag to live on. As much as I want to coddle Harlow's purple biker cheeks of the sanctuary, it's balanced by some great pros, but it has some very bad cons.
Thanks, B. I think I speak for both of us when I say that Artemis is a D-tier kind of island. While the island boasts a low crime rate, amazing attractions, and costumed heroes, the negatives are far more dangerous in nature. Tornadoes, thunderstorms, lack of agriculture, wild animals, etc. Like you said, people like the 7 and Spider-Man would have to work overtime to make the island a safe place to live. While I personally wouldn't be opposed to living here, as the Chapter 3 island is personally my favorite island we've gotten, it wouldn't be until after all the storms are taken care of, at a minimum. So yeah, I'm gonna have to put it in D tier like I said. It's not quite F tier because, as we're about to see, things could be much, much worse. Chapter 4's island, Asteria, was created upon the destruction of Apollo and Artemis at the hands of the last reality. Through the actions of many different loopers in the paradigm, they were able to get the 0 point to cobble together an island using huge chunks of land from all sorts of different realities. As such, Asteria features, for better or for worse, the most unique design out of all the islands we'll be taking a look at in today's video. Its uniqueness is complemented by equally distinct POIs, including medieval castles, ancient bastions, research stations, and mining colonies. In terms of pros it shares from previous islands, Asteria once again features agriculture in the form of frenzy fields, as well as the slap factories located at Slappy Shores. Much like the Chapter 3 island, Asteria has a good 3 to 4 different seasonal locations, from the snow-covered mountains of Brutal Bastion and Lonely Labs, to the autumn orange forests surrounding the Oathbound Empire's castles. Speaking of though, the various medieval landmarks are huge pros in my book, as they were always so fun to explore. If they're that much fun to explore in-game, imagine how fun they'd be to walk through in real life. And finally, Asteria is home to Faulty Splits, a shopping center that features a whole host of entertainment options, such as bowling, cafes, and even a hot dog joint. Speaking as someone who loves to bowl, this place is alright in my book. What's not alright, however, is the actual island's design. I may have called it unique at the beginning of this section, but that's not always a good thing, especially in this instance. Since the island is made up of all sorts of different chunks of land, this leads to several areas on the map both looking jagged and inconsistent, while at the same time being an absolute nightmare to traverse. You thought the roads on Athena were kind of inconvenient? The roads here have a tendency to lead to dead ends, and in some instances they don't lead anywhere at all. It's no wonder dirt bikes were introduced during this season. This is maddening. The only other big complaint I have for Asteria is the fact that it harbors huge chunks of kinetic ore. Now, while the kinetic ore can be harnessed to create weapons like the Shockwave Hammer, the mineral itself is highly unstable in nature. The ore's volatile nature was on full display when the rift gate built by Rift Warden Stellan malfunctioned, creating a sideways rift that would eventually usher in Mega City. All in all, while the Chapter 4 island offers some pretty breathtaking landmarks and great environmental diversity, it isn't enough to make me forget about how horrible it is to traverse. Combine that with the unstable kinetic ore, and you have a recipe for an island that would genuinely be dangerous to live on. With all that being said, Asteria gets the unfortunate pleasure of being put in F tier. Quite honestly, I could put the majority of Chapter 4 in F tier, but that's a discussion for another day. Let's quickly move on to the fifth and final section of this video. The final location we're going to be examining is the Chapter 5 island. Known officially as Helios, we actually don't know how or when this island was formed, only that it came into existence after the Big Bang live event. Helios notably takes inspiration from all sorts of European countries when it comes to the design of the POIs and landmarks, such as the German-inspired hazy hillside or the Italian-themed pleasant piazza. One thing of note is that, for the first time in Fortnite history, there's a train that wraps all the way around the island, making traversal even more convenient than ever before. Let's once again go over the pros Helios shares with the rest of the Fortnite islands. Yet again, this place features plenty of food and fresh water sources, even more so than the likes of Athena and Apollo. It also has more entertainment options than ever before, with areas like Ruined Rios providing a cinematic experience, and classy courts offering up some athletic options. There are more places than ever to live on the map, including, but not limited to, the coastal towns of Ritzy Rivera and Snooty Steps. And finally, Helios once again has some environmental diversity with the addition of the snowy mountains and boreal forests. In terms of new positives, I mentioned at the beginning of this section that Helios is home to public transportation in the form of a train. Speaking as someone who lives in America, this train is such a welcome change of pace from having to either walk or drive across the map. Helios is also just, in general, visually breathtaking. Look, I know it's not exactly fair to compare the visuals of Chapter 1 to Chapter 5, but god damn it if these graphics aren't eye candy. And of course, the most important pro of all, Peter Griffin is here. Yes. Much like the Chapter 2 island, I actually don't have a lot of cons to speak of here. The only thing that really comes to mind is that I wouldn't want to live in the snow-covered regions of the map since I really hate snow. But you know, there are plenty of living options outside that area, so it's not really that big of a deal. In conclusion, Chapter 5's map is, in my opinion, one of the best locations we've ever gotten in this game. From the beautiful visuals to the amazing European architecture to public transportation, I think it's fair to assume that living on this island in particular would be a dream. For all those reasons and many more, I'm going to place Helios in the same tier as Chapter 2's island, that being A tier. And that's all Fortnite's main Battle Royale islands done and dusted. As we can see here, nearly every single island is, at the very least, pretty chill to live on. Apollo and Helios are clearly the standout locations, having tons of positives and little to no negatives. Athena and Artemis, while they do have many issues, they offer a lot of cool places to explore and interesting landmarks to visit. Asteria is really the only island that I genuinely wouldn't want to live on. I'm telling you guys, that terrain is a huge deal breaker. Thanks for watching this video and making it to the end. Just as a reminder, this is all purely mine and B Meister's opinion, so if you felt differently at any point, just let me know down in the comments. Speaking of B Meister, I want to thank him for collaborating with me on this video. He occasionally makes videos about Fortnite too, such as his most recent video going over some of the best loading screens the game has to offer. A link to his channel will be down in the description, so make sure you check him out if you enjoyed this video. Also be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, check out my socials, and join my Discord server linked below. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and until next time, I'll see you in the next one.